Hello and welcome to the last in the current series of the Aspect Creative Toolkits workshop. Where have you been? If this is your first time joining us, you've missed some great sessions, but don't worry because they are going to be shared. We have a YouTube channel with all the videos on which Frank from Aspect will share with you, and we're also writing them up to give you like the top tips and key nuggets, give you a bit of FOMO, but also know which bit of the video to go to if you have a specific question or ask. So what have you missed? Well, we started off talking about video and about the power of visuals to tell a story and how expensive it is to make a cartoon. We then moved on to branding, which is really where you should start, to start with your why. Who are you talking to? What are you going to say to them? Also really looking at the demographic about what they respond to and how you have to tell the story. We had two sessions on AI, very much practical session with Blue, looking at ChatGPT and SciSpace and Gamma, but also all the other tools and how you can use them to expand your creativity. With their, they're a really good assistant, I find, when I use my AI, a good brain to pick, a good way to get clarity and perspective if you're using things like SciSpace. But again, he got us opening it and understanding how to use it, and then we took that a stage further with Jules from Spark AI, looking into how the tools really think and work, and again how you can use them for creativity, for research, intelligence. Obviously there's a lot. We got a little bit into the ethics of it, but that's obviously something we have to take into consideration in the academic field. And then our last session was all about data storytelling, which is really helping you once you've worked out who it's for and what tools you're going to use. Every project, everything we work on collects a lot of data. How do we use that? How do we work out what that kind of killer stat is? That's Frank's favorite phrase. Hello Frank. So that's Sam's favorite phrase. Frank's just joined us. That's Sam's favorite phrase, is that killer stat, that real hook, because we all respond to those. And make that if you said leading, we had some great comments in the chat. 5.6 million people have got this problem. We lean in and go, really? And then we want to know more. How do we get people to come on your journey to do that? And we want to say, Frank, thank you for Aspect for supporting this whole series.
No problem. Lucy, I just want to add to you, thank you everyone for joining us for the sixth session. We expect to continue this Creative 2 series in autumn 2025. So we will continue to source new topics and new resources or or continue popular session for you. And the tool we do that is to use a survey to understand what you like or what you find less useful. So after this session, I'll be sharing a link to a survey. It would be great if if you're watching the recording as well, to have a look at the survey and tell us what would you like to see in the next season. With that, enjoy this season,
But please do.
and session.
It's evolved, hasn't it, Frank? It's evolved from from our pilot, where we had series like Canva and
Mhm.
podcasts. We really want to hear from you. So if there's a topic we haven't covered that you really want to do, and let us know what level of session you want, whether you want to get nitty gritty and really into the detail and doing, which Blue was very much, or more conceptual. We're open to ideas because we want to keep it moving forward and supporting you. But thank you,
Yeah,
Frank, for allowing these to happen. So without Aspect, we couldn't be having these conversations.
no more. We would love to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Ben, what are we talking about today? Websites.
That's right. Yeah,
And
so
again, we would like you to watch the brand session with Sarah before you watch this, if you're watching this on record, because before you start talking to Ben, before you start looking at building a website, you've got to start with one. I know, Ben, you're going to reiterate that in this session as well. It's that narrative that we just want to keep reiterating. And the way these sessions work for anybody who's new, please put your questions in chat. I am Ben's wing woman for the next hour and a half. I'll be popping in and asking questions in real time. So if you have a thought or a comment, I know, Ben, you can see the chat as well, but we'll be working together to make sure we get to the questions in the moment, because that's one of the best things about doing these bits online. And I shall up and pass over to you.
yeah, let me just open up the chat window so I've got it there. Okay. Yeah, hi, I'm Ben. We're going to be talking about crafting effective websites today, and this will try and build on some of the other sessions you may have been part of. But equally, if you haven't been through the brand session or something like that, then some of the stuff I'm going to talk about touches on that as well. So yeah, hi, I'm Ben. I run an agency called the B Team. I've been designing and building websites for 25 years, and I've wrote a book on prototyping, which you can see there. Most of my work is to do with non-profits, good causes, and we do a lot of work around communicating research from academic research, particularly in the sort of health industry. Here's some of my clients. Yeah. So you can see a lot of NIHR, which is the research wing of the NHS there. Yeah, and in terms of today, what we're going to be talking through is the sort of, we'll go through the design process of what you need to do to kind of build a website. So we'll start off with establishing what you need. We'll look at the audiences you're trying to reach, and then we'll get into the different parts of the process, like information architecture, sketching, prototyping, content design, development, testing, launch, and then what happens after launch. And then at the end of the slide deck, there's some other slides about which give you various sort of tips and helpful information. We'll share the deck afterwards. It's open to the public, so you can go into there, and within the deck as well, I'll link to certain things, so it does work as a standalone sort of document as well.
We're aware that all of these sessions are pretty intense. There's a lot of information, so we do recommend watching them back and just kind of working out which bits are relevant, because there's some of you're all at different levels and stages of this. So yeah, we will be sharing all the content we have.
Super. Okay. Yep. So please add questions via the chat, and we'll triage them as we go and raise them as we can. Okay, and I've no idea how long this is going to take. We'll see. So in terms of the process, we've got basically two options in terms of how you might be considering creating a website for yourself or your organization. One option is using a website building tool, such as WordPress or Squarespace, Wix, and Canva have started a web design tool as well. So you can use those tools to set up a web presence quite easily, and you can do that yourself. So that's one method we're going to talk about, or one avenue. And then the other one is using a freelance designer, developer, or a fully blown web agency. And I'll talk about the sort of differences between them and you know, the pros and cons. It's likely budget's going to dictate the approach you take. However, going through the design process is useful for you in both scenarios. If you're doing it yourself, then it's good to go through these steps because they give you a bit of rigor around how you approach it. Equally, if you engage a designer or developer or web agency, it gives you an idea of the steps in the process that they should have. So you can understand ahead of engaging them, what that's going to look like. Also, if you are going to engage an agency or a freelancer, it's good to get yourself part way through the process first. So at least you've got a bit of an understanding of what you want, and that will help them understand what you need and tailor their service to fit you.
It's a bit like going to the hairdressers with a picture of what you want, as opposed, I'm sorry, Ben, I'm sure you have that all the time. But as opposed to trying to explain it, if you show someone and go, I like this website because it does this, and I hate this because that's those, that the flow, you're much more likely to have a very robust conversation with an agency or a designer if you go with, this is what my good looks like. Because otherwise you spend a lot of time trying to explain it, and they're trying to understand what you mean. And especially if it's the first time you're working with someone, they don't know what you mean because they don't know you, and then you'll be frustrated with V1. And I'm sure you must
Yeah.
have had that a lot of times with clients, and it's like you're trying to get out of them, what exactly does it look like in your head?
Yeah, I mean, the start of it is a brief as to what it's got to do and who it's got to serve and strategically what you need it to do. And then when you come through to the design side, it's really useful, like you say, to have these pictures of what good looks like and also what to avoid. So likes and dislikes. And that's a really good thing to sort of frame a discussion around.
And you might have a project which yours is very different to, but it has a lovely narrative or lovely flow, and go, yeah, just literally, there's nothing wrong with just going, hey, let's just, pinch this. They've done all the
Yeah,
work.
exactly. Borrow ideas, and it might be something like you like the color palette or the font, the typography, or illustrations, colors, all sorts. So
It could be the user experience, it could be just a really nice flow. But yeah, don't be afraid to go and do some shopping and go and work out, what do I actually want mine to look like? And how that matches in with your brand. Is your brand for your project very playful? Is it fun? Is it quite formal? What do you not want it to look like is really important. A website you hate is great to share.
Yeah, exactly. We do ask for those as well. Um, okay, super. So, yeah, in terms of the first step is defining what you need it to do as an organization, as a person. Um, you know, and the things you need to think about there are, what do you or your organization need it to do? What audiences are you going to seek to engage via the website? And then putting yourself in the shoes of those audiences, what are they there to do? Um, if you go through that kind of process, it's useful for you to, getting a design brief together to give to someone if you're employing someone to help you. If you're in the research world, then it's useful for funding applications, as in you've got some defined thinking about what you need to produce. And it's also useful for you if you're going to produce it yourself. Um, in terms of how we approach this when we're doing it, and you might have covered a bit of this in um, the branding workshop or the branding talk, webinar, that's the word. This is an approach we use to give us just a quick understanding of what an organization is and does, and the why behind it. So in terms of how we approach that, I'll just show you a quick example. So this is for a client, which is a biomedical research center. I think it was probably the one in Bristol. And essentially, what do you do? They conduct biomedical research, obviously, and they have certain themes that they work across. And then, they also do training, they build partnerships with industry, so on and so forth. So this is, for your organization, write down the things that you do. And then in terms of the audiences, that's this who for question. So in this case, it's patients and public, people who are interested in training in a medical career, industry partners, researchers, that sort of thing.
And this is so many people. So one of my challenges here is how can we talk to all of them?
Well, yeah, so we sort of prioritize them as the answer, but this is for like it's a massive organization doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's likely will have 4 or 5 of these cards rather than
And then you
15.
prioritize them and go, who's the,
Yeah,
if we
exactly.
had to hook one person to, especially because this is V1 for, it's just getting that project out there.
Yeah, exactly. So in this case, it would be probably a toss-up between researchers and the public,
Mm.
because there's a big push towards engagement in the last few years. And then you might have, like the media, like journalists, press, that sort of thing. You might
Yeah.
have a consideration around how you present content for them. They might not be so important that you have a press section, but you're considering this audience and making sure you're just thinking
It's a
about what
really
they
interesting
might do.
conversation, isn't it, to have about, this project could be applicable to so many people, but for also for like for V1, who do we most need to engage, whether they can bring connections or get traction. You could I think prioritizing conversation is a really interesting one for the project overall. As you said, a lot of this work is useful for so many things.
Yeah, exactly. And if you are in the early stage or want to get something out there just quickly to see if the market is there for it, then yeah, focus on the primary customer, primary audience you want to engage. The other side of it is, so why do you do what you do for those audiences? And in this case, it's trying to improve patient outcomes. And then there's a responsibility to build the research workforce of the future, that sort of thing. So you're thinking about, okay, well, why are we doing this? And then why do we do it better is your sort of, it might be your value proposition or, um, yeah, that sort of thing. So, why are we really good at this? Um,
And a great tool
so,
for doing this, if you've not heard of it before, is Business Model Canvas,
mm,
which is covered on, I think, on some other training. But Business Model Canvas it's open source, it's absolutely free, and it has your customer segmentations, your value propositions, and then your routes to marketing. So we're really talking about the top right of the canvas, but it's a really lovely way to post-it note it like this and kind of think, well, who are they? Where are they? How do we reach them?
yeah, exactly. So if you've done that before, and like I've gone through it a few years ago, and it
It's
was
really
really
lovely, isn't it? It's
valuable.
really visual, and it's
It's
like the
just very,
opposite of a business plan because you're just doing.
Well, that's the thing is it is a sort of workshopy type exercise. It's really good to do, and if you've got the information, then you can like transpose it into this.
Yeah.
But it will also identify your channels. So your channels to your customers. One of your channels will be your website.
Yes.
And
This is
another
it.
boat will be social media or something like that. So
Precisely. Yeah.
yeah, that can sort of come across here and fill in a lot of content around this and some of the other things I'm going to show you in a bit.
Is it, if you've not heard of that tool, we recommend it, strategizer.com. I recommend you go and have a little nose after this, because there are also lots of variants of it, but it's all free, all free and open source. You can go and have a play and look at how other people have approached it.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the sort of purpose exercise around, your organization or yourself. And then the next step is thinking about your audiences. So we've listed our audiences in that previous exercise. And the next thing to do is looking at each audience in turn is think about, what do they do? Like a bit of context around who they are, what do they do, where are they, where do they work? And then the next part of this is thinking about what tasks they want to achieve and why. So this is sort of to do with the website. So when they visit your website, what tasks are they wanting to achieve and why? And the way we frame this is as a persona, we call them. And each has a title, some content about them, and then these user stories. I can show you an example here. So in this case, still thinking about the biomedical research center, we're thinking about patients and the public. So this might include patient groups. Patient groups are groups of people that form a group around a specific health condition. For example, you might get a patient group around diabetes, for instance. And they're there to sort of help each other as well, but also get involved in research. They participate in research. And another part of this, so if you're public and you are a friend, family, carer of someone who's got diabetes, so sticking with diabetes, you might be interested in finding out about the latest research in that specific theme. So people are thinking about finding content about diabetes in this website. And so we can write up these user stories, such as I'm interested in finding out information about a specific research topic or theme because I have a related illness. So that's the thing we need to think about when we're designing the website and creating content. Others might be, I want to sign up to join a patient group so I can participate. They might want to understand what participation means in research, because it can be, you're someone who tries a new drug or another intervention, but you can also be involved in research from a kind of collaborator perspective, as in you're informing the research study as to how it should work, what it should do, who it should engage, that sort of thing. But yeah, you can see here we're outlining these tasks, and it's nice if you can give it a bit of a why as well. For example, we could have just stopped short of just saying, yeah, I'm interested in find out information about a specific research topic or theme. But adding the piece around, because I have a related illness tells us a bit more. Allows us to think about, okay, well, how can we use names of illnesses to pull people into content around research themes and topics, because usually they aren't named after the illness. So it's good to try and consider that kind of, use a story of I want to do X so I can achieve Y. Most of the time we've got a pretty good idea of our audiences, but sometimes, when you're doing this example, you might not have too much content here. And actually you do tend to find some of these are a bit blank. If it's the case that you don't know much about that audience, or you'd like to understand more, or the priority audience, and you really need to know what you're doing, then you can do some more research on them. The two ways we tend to do that, one is doing a survey. So you can set up surveys quite easily with stuff like Google Forms, Microsoft Forms, that sort of thing. And you can send it out to your audience and have them complete it. The idea with creating surveys is to make the questions sort of closed questions, so it's multiple choice or pick an option or that sort of thing. that enables you to process the data really easily because you can just draw a chart from people picking 1 to 5 on a scale. If you make all your questions open, then you're going to have to go read all those responses. And if you get 100 responses, that's going to take you quite a lot of time. But it is really good to get this data. If you get a lot of people, this quantitative data is good to have. The other thing we do is one-to-one interviews. These are semi-structured, so we have a theme guide for them. It's about things we want to talk about, but they meander and range wildly. And depending on a participant, can go into lots of different tangents. Again, this is really useful. It gives you a bit more of a qualitative view of an audience. And generally we aim for 5 people to do this sort of thing from a single audience. So if you do 2 audiences, 10 people. A blend of the two is really nice because it gives you that kind of qualitative side where you can really deep dive into things and ask people more questions and explore things versus the survey, where you can get answers to questions from lots of people and have a bit more sort of statistical certainty about the outcome.
Something I love about this is we talked about AI last week. This is where AI for me gets into another league because you can if you get lots of data, you can put it into a chat and start asking it questions. You can engage with data from surveys really well using generative AI.
You can, but always check it because sometimes it does make up
Oh,
data or
yes.
wants to give you an answer. But I mean, for
Yeah.
example, these days I've been doing research interviews the last 2 days. No, not 2 days, 2 weeks. And each time I'm running it through a couple of AI transcription tools to generate, well, just to transcribe the conversations firstly, because I'm busy focusing on how to do the interview and facilitating that and thinking about the next question.
Yeah.
And yeah, different ones vary. Like I'm trying one called Fireflies. I've got one in Notion. Most of my
I've
calls are
got
on
fireflies
Meet.
as well. Yeah.
So Gemini sort of pops up and goes, "Do you want me to do this?" And it is interesting. It is useful to do that. But yeah, like it can give you a really quick snapshot of the points covered. It's worth going through it again, but it gives you that sort of quick kind of
And
head
I
start, I
agree with
guess.
your point there as well, is if you're trying to actually conduct an interview, trying to write it while you're doing it, you can't actively listen while you're writing. So those tools, I say I've used Granola, yeah, there's lots of that, and then you're right, they do vary. But at least you can capture, obviously you have to tell someone you're recording it, you're not going to quote them without checking that with them, but it just means you can really actively listen and allow the interview to be a lot richer.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing I do is write rough notes as I go, but mostly with a timestamp, so I can go
Yeah,
back and check the thing that was said at 10 minutes, 30 seconds in. Um,
yeah.
and then also just, bear in mind with acronyms, and particularly in our work with researchers, there's tons of acronyms flying around and abbreviations, just making sure that they're spelt out.
That really does confuse the platforms because they
Yeah,
don't know what it
not
means.
happy. No, tries to form it into a word and often gets it wrong.
But it's good to, if you wanted to do that kind of synopsis high level, what are the key themes? It's lovely for that. When you want to get nitty gritty, I think you're absolutely right. You've got to go back and go into those specific conversations.
Yeah, and this is, really if you want kind of, big data analysis, then use a survey. And then if you do have open answers, just try and code them. So, for example, if you ask people where they work, they'll say Bristol University or University of Bristol. And data-wise, they'll be analysed separately, but you need to code those to say, yeah, it's University of Bristol for all of these.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Um, So having got this understanding of what your organization does, needs, and what an audience is trying to do and needs from your website, then you can start thinking about how you might structure it. You probably have a fairly good idea from the get-go of assumption as to like how this might work. Um, but yeah, essentially the next step is to create this information architecture. Um, you can see a sort of vague example here, a really simple one where you've got, a dashboard is part of this one. So that could be your homepage, say, and then you've got services, about us, contact, that sort of thing. All this does is show a sort of hierarchy of pages. Um, the ones we do are a bit more detailed. So in this example, the grey boxes are pages, the yellow boxes are the content and functionality of those pages. this is for a research project, so a thing called Ready. And so on this About Ready page, we need to explain about the research, who's involved. We need to state who the funder was and an acknowledgement piece of text there. And that's how we tend to lay these out. Yeah, you've got things like a list of case studies, single case studies, contact, search, privacy, that sort of thing. This is really useful also if you're able to take it to a freelancer or agency and said, look, this is what I think our sitemap should be, or of information architecture. That gives them a really good head start because it tells them how many pages there are, how many templates, and that's usually what they use as a sort of yardstick for how much things cost. So it's good to do this thinking.
And be really strict, because it's amazing how quickly this can get out of control, as in a page, a page, a page, a page.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, we just do this, we just do this. Like, do we really need to do this? What function is that page really having? Is that really important to the narrative for this first iteration?
Yeah, exactly. So, if you think about each page, you're thinking about what content is there, what functionality does it has, does it have a web form? Is it a list of things you can filter or search? And then what template it uses, because a lot of
And
your internal
yeah.
pages can use the same template. And if designer and developer, they only need to design that once rather than for each page.
And we all work for universities, which are great examples of websites that probably started relatively simple and are now just beasts because they've grown and grown and grown and grown and grown. You've got the luxury of like, what exactly do we need to not let it become that? Because it's really sometimes the bigger it is, the more complicated it is, the more impossible it is to actually find the information you want.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that's a problem with lots of large organizations, is that organically things grow over time.
People had a page. A thing
And if
happens, they had a page.
yeah, exactly. So, in universities, especially, I mean, they're sprawling websites because just by the nature of what they do, there's a lot
Yeah.
there. So having this architecture defined quite tightly means that, every time someone adds a case study, it goes under here. So it's got a home. It isn't going to sprawl too badly. Um, from that point, you can have 20 case studies or 40 case studies, and at that point you might think, okay, well now we need to filter it. The key thing with this, it gives you something to reference against the user needs that you establish for each persona. So for every need that a persona has, you should be able to go into this architecture and say, okay, for this task, where would you go here? And if you can find somewhere, then that's good. At that very basic level, you've got somewhere where someone can complete that task. So that's why we have those key tasks, so you can reference them against all your work in the future. Yeah, that's another example of an IA. Yeah, and then there's some other methods which are a bit more detailed we can go into, which help you think about the way people navigate through websites. Um, so the simplest one is a user flow diagram. So you map out what someone does when they're doing something interactive. And by interactive, I mean more interactive than just viewing text on a page. They have to do something and go through a process to get somewhere. In this case, this is essentially a checkout process where you're buying something. So someone logs in. So the assumption is they have an account. They want to pay via that account. You can see there's a decision thing here. Did they get the login right? If they didn't, then reset the password and then check whether that email matches database records, that sort of thing. Or yes, they log in, they can view their account details, pay the credit card, and so on and so forth. Actually, it's not e-commerce, it's paying your credit card. But you can see just by mapping this out, you can think, okay, what do we need to do in this process? Okay, and now we need parts of a page or pages for each of these steps. So you need a login form, you need a recover password page, you need to pay your credit card page, that sort of thing. Another one is user journey mapping. I'll dive into the example for this one. So along the top here, you've got these different stages of someone in a journey that involves your organization's website. The first stage is awareness. So at what point are they aware of the website, your organization, the thing they're in? Second is arrival. So how do they get to your website? Actions is the next stage, and that is, what do they want to do there? But also what else are they doing outside of involvement on that website? And then following up is what happens once they've left your website. What can you do after? And then you've got two rows after that, front stage and backstage. Front stage is the public version of the website, so the thing the public sees, and then backstage is the website sort of code base or CMS or your organization doing stuff in the background. So you can see here, in awareness, someone was shown this website in a live webinar session, or they shared a link and they get to that website. They arrive there, and in this case, this was for a training thing with GP surgeries around testing blood. So they arrive at the website, they say what GP practice they're from, they nominate what type of role they have, and then they're into actions on the website, and what they're doing is trying to get some training, finding out about how to do blood testing better, that sort of thing. And then in the background, we want to, when they arrive, we want to record their arrival, record what practice they're related to, and record their role. So you can see we're building up this quite nice idea of what happens outside the website, how do they get there, and what do we do afterwards. And then along this, it's quite common to map out pain points, so potential issues. For example, if they're on a mobile phone, you need to know about that, or they might forget their login. And then opportunities. So these are opportunities we have to, do better at serving that customer, say. So it might be that once someone's visited your website and done something, in a week's time, you can follow up to support them with the thing that they've done. That it is really good to sort of consider that whole experience for the user. And then if you've got something quite complex, in this case, this is when we designed and built this short story platform that you could listen to, but also read. So it was, you could be sat on the bus, reading a short story, and then you'll get to your bus stop, you get off the bus, and you can switch to audio, put your phone in your pocket, and walk along and continue the story. So with this, MacGuffin was the name of the product, and this is someone's journey through the experience of signing up and getting to kind of read or listen to a story. So we start at the beginning with, someone's shared a link or they've seen it on social media. They sign up, they go through the process of finding stories, and we've got these different ideas around how people might want to filter stories to find them. So it might be that there's genres they're interested in, or specific authors, or it might be they want a short story, or a story set in a particular location. So we've got this idea around how we might search. And then from here, so user Jenny enters the term sci-fi, she selects the story, and starts listening to it. And then a big part of this was we wanted to motivate people to tag, so we could have social tagging, creating taxonomies of how stories are discovered. So quite an involved process. And you can see here the ticks are where we've mapped happy points, and the warning signs is where there's pain points. We need to get across to the user why tagging stories is useful, and why they should do it. So those are three other ways of sort of exploring what your needs are from what you've got to produce, and then referencing that against the information architecture to make sure you've got all the steps in the process for people to achieve these tasks or these experiences. Yeah, okay. And then the next step after you've got your structure together, is looking at sketching or wireframing. At this point, what we're doing is trying to get a visual representation of each page down on paper, or on screen. We're big fans of sketching, especially collaborative sketching here. That can look like this. So this is, I think it's all from the same project. but with people with different sort of takes on, how they might want to sketch. Um, all really useful. And the idea is, you give people 5 minutes, they do some sketches, you put them up on the wall, you discuss what they've done, and then you can use things like dot voting, where you give everyone 5 dots to vote for their favorite features or the features they'll think will be most successful. The key is, it should be quick and dirty, and you get your ideas out on paper fast. That's the whole point of it. And yeah, like this is a bit of shorthand for, you've got boxes and lines. Box with a cross in as an image. Titles can be squiggly lines. Text can be straight lines, that sort of thing. So that's sketching, and that's a really good place to start when you're thinking about what goes onto your pages. And then you've got wireframes, which look like this thing on the right. I'll just show you that in a bit more detail. So this is for Exeter Biomedical Research Centre. The thing we're doing on the homepage is showing their themes, their thematic areas they work in. And then we're talking about the other things they do. So patient and public involvement, engagement, training, working with industry. And then we've got latest research projects and latest news. And then there's our footer. So this is a bit more like it's a higher fidelity than sketching. It's giving you a bit more kind of an idea of hierarchy and structure and font size and that sort of thing, and what really goes into these pages that you're designing. You can use lots of different tools for this. Figma is the sort of industry standard. Sketch is another one. There's one called Mockups, and you can use whatever you have. Like PowerPoint's good too. You can put boxes and text on a page, and you can hyperlink between slides, so you can create interactive prototypes with it, which is what we're going to talk about next. So once you have these sketches or wireframes, you can build a prototype. And by that, we mean we make it clickable. So you can click on items within it, and that navigates you around the website and takes you to other places. Reasons why you should do this. So while you're going through it, it acts as a sense check to make sure you've got everything you need in these pages. When you build it, you might realize you've missed a button, or you're not quite sure how someone goes back from where they are, or things like that. You can then share it with collaborators, so people in your team or friends, family, whoever you want to try and get it in front of. And it gives you an artifact to talk about. You can test it with users. So, you can do some quick user testing. So take your audience's key tasks, ask them to complete it with the thing you've created, and see how they do. You always learn something valuable when you do that. And yeah, usually when we're doing that, we're testing with 5 people. And that can be us in a coffee shop offering to buy someone a coffee for 5 minutes of their time to test something, or we can do it over Zoom like this and ask someone to share their screen. And also the sort of last step with this is if you've got something where it's important to use real data to test the experience, then you can do that with a prototype that's a website. So yeah, 2 of the tools I mentioned for wireframes actually are capable of doing this. So Figma and Sketch, you can both create prototypes from those. If you've done sketches, or if you've done this in PowerPoint or another tool like Canva or something like that, then you can import them into tools like Marvel, and then you can draw hotspots on those pictures to stitch them together into making a clickable prototype. PowerPoint I mentioned, Canva. HTML, you can use frameworks if you want to get into coding. You can do that. And then there's also website builders. We'll have a look at those later on as well. And in terms of examples for this, so I think, yeah, this extra one. So you can see those flashing blue boxes. When I tap on this, it shows the hotspot. So I can navigate through to the about page like that. Or I can go and view news and then scroll through that. So that's what I mean by a clickable prototype, and it's really quick and easy to do. You can also do this for things like apps. So this is a tool we developed for the Met Office. First thing so this project was about they wanted to survey what the public thought of their weather icons, whether they understood what they thought they meant, and whether that matched what the meteorologist meant. the first thing we did was build a prototype of this to say, okay, is this what you need? And so you can see if we go through this, we're going through this first part of the survey, and then here's a weather icon, and we've got these different format questions. So in this case, it's multiple choice or your own answer. And so I can select one of those. We had another choice, which was, okay, probability of rain based on this icon. Yeah, and then we mocked up the survey. Another question format here is, okay, which icons mean it'll be sunny today? Yeah, and then you can see the experience there. So that was a really quick and valuable way to create a prototype to share with the client and say, okay, is this what you think? It looks like it's loading. Yeah, that's a shame.
Just
Doesn't
thinking
look like
about
it's
it,
going to
it'll
work.
get there.
Yeah. Let's go to the other one first. So this is an actual HTML prototype. So this is coded with HTML. It's for it was for the English Language Centre in London. They do language courses for foreign students. Well, actually more people we were testing with were young learners. And we had these various sort of tools to sort of say, okay, here's the process we want people to go through. And they can select places on a map and then click through and they find their courses. And then we've got these various interactions, to go through the booking process and that sort of thing. We tested this with, it was like 5, 6 students in person in a room with this to improve how this worked. And we got some interesting information out of that to make it better. Let's see if this loaded. It hasn't. Never mind. I'm sure you get the idea. You create clickable artifacts, prototypes of website experiences you can refine based on user feedback. Let me see. So next bit is content. So the words and media that go on pages. The best advice I can give is just keep it short and sweet and to the point. Don't use jargon. Simplicity is hard, but making your content accessible means that it is easier for everyone to use. And also bear in mind, people don't read websites in the same way you might read a book. They scan in an F pattern sort of down the left side and scan from the left margin across. And
This is
really,
why it's so important to get to what is the call to action of your website. What do you want them to do when they come to your website? As you said, are they buying a thing? Are they signing up for a thing? Are they giving you feedback on a thing? Because if there's too much information, we just can't cope with our brains. We just won't. So we won't do anything. The worst website, again, and it's it just says it's just too busy, and you don't quite know where to click. And we've all been on those sites, and you just go, oh, and off you go. You want to get to it and get the thing done.
yeah, exactly. People scan websites for the thing they're interested in. They don't read everything. So yeah, bear that in mind.
But that was interesting feedback from you about where to put the thing. You talk about the F shape there. It's when you're
That's the way they scan. So you can do eye tracking, where you have like an eye tracker on top of the monitor and it tracks your eyes as you go through a prototype or something. And the thing people do is start logo top left and then scan along the main header, look at the menu items, and then start scanning through the page, but always sort of return to the left side and going like that across the page.
and so
So
that's where you put your key. The key thing has got to be high. Obviously, you can't replace your logo with your key ask, but if you've got a time sensitive, book on, webinar coming up or whatever it might mean, it might be rather putting it there will get them to do.
yeah, the higher up the page, the more attention,
Don't
the
hide the good
more
stuff at the
people,
bottom.
yeah, the more people will see it. But there's a myth about a page fold, like keeping things above the fold, and that comes from newspapers where
Okay.
things would be stacked in a pile
Yeah.
and the newspaper is folded over. So newspaper layout designers would want to keep their headlines above the fold, so that when you see a stack of newspaper, that's, it makes you want to pick that up. With websites, sometimes it's brought across, but it's false, it's fake, like it's a myth. Like the fold is different on every device based on the width of the device, particularly these days now, well,
Yeah.
mobile phones came out 15 years ago, but within that you can't particularly predict where the fold is. And the key thing is just, making sure you're using the right language, using the right labeling to allow people to navigate into the structure of the website that their content and functionality is that they need to complete their task.
Yeah.
I've got some links here around writing for the web. So when we share this, you can have a look at those. And then, yeah, avoid cheesy stock photography. It just looks lazy, and people are good at recognizing it. Your customers want to see real people in your website.
And one of the
And if
sessions
they
we did in the pilot and the first session was what good images we can get on phones. If you've got it's got to be a relatively new phone, but you can actually get images that are worth putting on websites on phones these days, or make one of your investments professional photographers. Yeah, we want to see your project.
Yeah, exactly. And sort of depending what you're doing, um, I keep on using the word customers, and that might not be right, but there's a thing around social proof, as in people want to see people like them in the thing that they're
Yeah.
looking at. But
It's one
like,
of
so
my
when,
first investments for me is to get photos, because it's good for social, it's good for website. And if it makes you back to storytelling, it might feel like an investment up front to get a photographer in for your first workshop or for your first meetup or whatever, your first research session, whatever it is. But having that photographer there just means when you write it up, tell your stories, talk about your research, as you say, Ben, people can see their people and they'll
yeah,
want to
exactly.
involve. Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff, well, some of the stuff we do is around trying to engage underrepresented minorities in healthcare, say. And so you need to be using the correct imagery for that. Similarly, trust is often a big thing around research. So if you're using cheesy stock photography, it looks like
We can all tell
it
it's
looks a
stock
bit lazy.
photography, and we know that AI imagery, we had fun with that in Blue Session. We know that's getting better, but I think as humans, we still intuitively know, currently, we know that it's not real. I know deep fake is getting a lot better, but don't fake it. Show the real people, tell their stories.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I've got a list of image libraries which we share with clients to use, and these, some of them are quite specialist in terms of showing older people or black or brown people, that sort of thing. Yeah, so that's a useful resource. Um, yeah, and then if you're using video, um, I should update this slide actually. So you can use YouTube to host your video, and then you embed the YouTube in your website. Another option is Vimeo. Um, Yeah, and essentially those can be embedded in your website. If you use YouTube, then your video can also be in the YouTube ecosystem. It can also be discovered, because obviously Google own YouTube. So SEO wise, or appearing in people's searches, using YouTube is a good idea. It's also in YouTube's ecosystem as well. So if they're searching for something, your video can pop up there. Um, in some cases, you don't want that. So if you've got an illustration or an animation about what your project is, and you just want it to appear on your website, then I'd recommend using something like Vimeo instead, because that gives you a cleaner experience. And YouTube also, once the video is complete, it pops up with recommendations based on your or the user's profile. So it will show something different after it for me than it would for my partner, or any of you guys. Um, yeah, so it's worth considering that. Like, what do you want the experience to be? Do you want people just to know this is in YouTube, or do you want to use Vimeo? Both are free to an extent. I think Vimeo asks you to pay after a little while. Or it might be, I think it's the amount of megabytes of video you have. Um, yeah, and in terms of accessibility, if you can have it captioned, that is good. So people can have subtitles. Um, you know, that helps a lot more people than you would think it would. It's not for deaf people. It's helps lots of other people too.
But a lot of us watch videos on our phones when we're commuting. We watch videos with the sound off quite a lot.
Mm,
So I mean, I quite often, when you're watching Instagram or something, you often watch the video, but you're not listening to it.
yeah,
So I think it's for all users. We need to have that.
yeah, it's a good idea. And then in terms of, I think I sort of touched on this earlier about keeping things simple. So simplifying content is not the same as dumbing it down. It's hard to do to make things concise and succinct and to the point. And there's some tools to help you. So there's a readability testing tool, which will give you an idea of what reading age your content can be evaluated at. Keeping that lower is better. There's another resource, which is the first word. So that's another complexity analysis tool. And that gives you tips on how to simplify. And then Hemingway is brilliant. If you're writing content or if you want to copy and paste it into there, it's good for telling you where you've got really complex sentences and how to restructure them. There's also tools. I use Grammarly, which is a sort of helper tool. So wherever I type, it does corrections, sorts out my grammar, has suggestions, and you can sort of pre-program it with a sort of tone of voice as well, whether you want to be friendly or authoritative or that sort of thing. That's quite good. So yeah, but do make an effort to make things, nice and accessible. Okay, we're on to design now. And we're almost now in. So you've got a plan for your website, you've got sketches and wireframes, and you've got your content, you're ready to start designing things. So if you're using a website builder like WordPress or Wix or Squarespace, the way these work is you're able to pick a theme, and that theme has a design that's preset that you can use in your website. Some of them have customizable options, like the theme could have a color scheme that you change, or you change the base color, or it might be light or dark or that sort of thing. There's thousands to choose from. The general idea is that you want to have a rough idea from your wireframes or sketches what your layout wants to be like, and then that helps you make a choice of the theme. Um, if you're using a design agency or freelancer, they will produce the designs for you. They're bespoke, essentially. They'll use wireframes or sketches as a guide, or they'll produce them for you. And yeah, the thing you sort of need to help them or to guide them in that is some information about your brand identity. And again, as we discussed earlier, websites you like the look of and websites you don't like, which are things to avoid. In terms of a brand, the minimum you need is your logo. So there's some examples there. Often they're either stylized or they have a name and an icon, or they're just a name style, like Greenhouse is just a name style, it's text and a color and a font. So there's some different variations of those. If you don't have one, then the easiest one to produce is a name style. Think about a font which matches your other typographical choices and colors. Um,
There are some free logo building tools as well out there to help you play with it.
yeah,
I mean, I definitely
yeah.
think it's worth getting it polished by a designer, which is I've done that before again to show them what good looks like, but have a play around with some free tools to get again, oh, that looks great. Oh, that looks awful.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then the other side of it is you need some colors. It's good to have a core set of colors and then some grayscales. And then what a designer is likely to do is take your core colors and expand those into um, different shades of that color. So, for example, they would take this blue and expand it into lighter blues. So they've got a bit more variance to use in the design. And then the other thing is think about typography. So what font you're going to use. In this case, you can see one called Open Sans. This one's quite nice. It was specifically designed for readability. Yeah, so those three things, logo, colors, font, and that's what a designer needs to get going. To help you generate some stuff here, so there's a couple of color palette generators. Like if you know you like one color, you can use these generators to give you some complementary colors. using some color theory, using the color wheel, which is basically like the rainbow wrapped around a wheel. You can find that the opposite color on the color wheel complements. So blue and navy, sorry, blue and navy, same thing. Orange and navy complement each other, or it might be triads where there's the color and then there's the two that are opposite it, sort of thing. So you've got three. And then Google Fonts is a good place to look for fonts that are free to use on the web. Um, so we've sort of gone down the sort of agency or freelancer route here. So they've produced a design that should be iterative. They should present you some designs and say, you know, what do you think about this piece, this piece, this piece? Now, it's good if they try and structure the feedback and ask you for things that they need, like they need some guidance around how to present news articles or how many you want to show and that sort of thing. If they're just sending it to you to say, what do you reckon to this design, then yeah, it's a bit messy that way. But yeah, you should have gone through that process, have some agreed designs, and at that point, when they're signed off, as in, you know, you've said yes, please build these, no further changes, they'll start building the website. If it's a freelancer or an agency, they'll go fairly quiet at this point. They'll go away, they'll build it, they'll bring it back, and when it's ready for content, or they'll be entering the content themselves, or they might ask you to as part of the process. If you're using a website builder, there, and we'll go through a bit of a demo of this, you'll be adding pages in your website and using the builder to add different blocks and modules to those pages. You should be able to preview them, and then the danger with using website builders is every page is unique. There's no system there, and because you're building each page one at a time. So it's good practice to build a page that is the way you want it to be, clone that page and edit it to create new ones. And that keeps your positioning and style and sort of your design patterns consistent across the website. I'm going to try and build a website with Squarespace. I'm going to try Canva actually. We did Squarespace last time. Oh no,
I forgot you do Squarespace. I might have a Squarespace question for you after this.
I don't do Squarespace.
Oh,
The
I have been and my head hurts. They all have their
the
idiosyncrasies, don't they? It's images on Squarespace. It only likes it a certain way. They all think slightly differently. So I think with these tools, I recommend having a play and seeing which one you like, the one that thinks the way you do. As I think it's true with any tool that you use.
yeah, I mean the first web Squarespace site I built was the one you saw me building the last time we did this workshop. So and this is the first, I didn't even know Canva did websites till this morning. So this is really
This is very
me
raw. We like
coming
it.
to it cold. So I want to design a website. So how do I do that? It's
There's a button. There you go. Go right. Go right. There you go. Blue. There
website.
you
Yay.
go.
There we are. We'll do it
Look at the
together.
templates. This is what I love, is picking a template and then again you've got that whole
Oh, what have I done?
yeah.
Right, so this is what I'm looking for in terms of templates. So let me see.
And you've got styles as well, so you can really start playing around with it.
I'm going to do this one. Yeah, so say I was a freelance designer. Let's go with this. Coleman, yeah, and I'm based in
We're not in San
sunny,
Francisco. I'm sure it's sunnier
I'm in
there.
sunny Bristol. I don't do Twitter. Um, yeah, so you can see these pages and start editing things. So let's add a section. That's adding a page. So how do I add things? Okay, so let's see. So here's an array of things I can add. So I'm going to add a picture. It looks like I can arrange that. So I'm going to try and have a picture on the left this time and some text on the right. And where are we? Let's see. Body text.
On the YouTube channel, we have a Canva session with George, and one of the best bits about Canva is because it's also drag and droppy. You can just kind of play around with it and add bits. But what I like on the website is it had those headers and the fact you can link the connections. It very quickly, if you just need to get a few simple pages out for an event or with a whatever it might be, this is a very quick way of doing that.
Yeah, I want a button. Give me a button. Where are we? I don't want a pro button. I want a simple button. Not such a literal button. Graphics, photos, frames, videos. Weird. Ah, there we are. Buttons. So yeah, what we're doing here is just building up a bit of a page. And how can I left align that text? Oh, there we are here. So that's left aligned. And we should be able to preview that. So if I go in, you can see we've added that sort of box at the bottom.
It's
And
currently a scroller type of website, so yeah, you kind of keep going down, but
yeah, I'm
it,
wondering
it's fun though.
how I magic write. What's that? Let's try some magic writing.
Well, Canva's got quite a lot of AI in there now, and I think the AI is on the paid version, or the
Oh,
majority of it is. But you can do a lot on AI to kind of to build it through. And we also looked at Gamma with Blue in one of the earlier sessions, and you can build websites in Gamma as well with a very similar sort of style.
yeah, so I'm just asking this to rewrite it for me. So it's done that. All like this. Yeah, so it's got a nice little sort of rewriting tool for you there. And then the thing I want to do here is I want to link to page 2. Right, okay, and where's my pages? They'll be here somewhere. Ah, there we are, down here. So, and like I said, duplicate page, there we are. So we're going to try and build, like at the moment, this is just the home page. So I'm going to go to this one and call it my bio. And get rid of that stuff. And that. And that. And that. And that. And then we want more content there. So I'm going to stick a big load of content in there and expand the page out to cover it. Okay, that'll do. And let's get rid of that. And make that underlined to show we're on it. Actually, that's the wrong one. Let's do bio. So yeah, and then we go back here, click on bio. I should be able to link that to page 2. All right, let's preview it. So we should have got yeah, so that goes through to my bio page. Doesn't have a home page, so I can't get back. But yeah, you can see, so you can add pages, do different designs. Oh, and we can do it on mobile as well. That's interesting. That's quite nice.
That's really simple, isn't it? Very intuitive.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's probably enough. Well, what
The
else
key
can we
narrative
add?
here is be brave and go and have a play. So again, I think you'll talk about this in a second, but if this helps you with the what you do and don't like narrative.
Yeah, exactly. And I should be able to change, I might be able to change my theme as well. So if I decide I don't like that one. What else do we have? You can draw on it, you can upload. videos, so you can put a video in. Add your brand fonts. I think that's a paid for thing. But yeah. Oh, and there's logos here actually. Yeah, so you could use this maybe to create a logo. Yeah, so that's using a web builder. They're all broadly the same. You select a theme and then get into it and see how you go.
They're very
Yeah,
intuitive. I would still recommend having a plan of what you want your colours to be and your pages to be, because otherwise you will spend days down that rabbit hole. So
yeah,
you
exactly. So if I'm here and I know my menu's got 4 items, that's great. But I've got a menu with 10 items, then this design probably isn't the one I want to choose.
exactly.
So you can make decisions around things like that.
So come to it with a bit of a mission, and also what you want it to be, because I think those are great for the V1, which is the simplest version. Then they're never going to be as your project matures or you get more traction, it won't be in Canva. It probably will be a wordspace site that you're going to want to get somebody professional to build,
mm,
but it'll get you some momentum and it'll get you some analytics. It'll start to help you understand who is engaging and what they're doing and what they're interested in, and all that stuff is amazing. And to do it, it's kind of guerrilla marketing, isn't it? What can we do with no money to help us hopefully get some grants or traction in the future?
yeah, and you can do stuff like add Google Analytics to sites. You know who's visiting it. Not who's visiting it, but how many people are visiting it. So if your
Where from?
purpose
And
is to
yeah,
sort of set up a website just to get some traction, run a social media campaign and try and get people onto your site, then you can test whether it's working or not.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I sort of said a bit about this. So if you've engaged a freelancer or agency and they're building a website, it'll be quite quiet. Like they're just head down, building, take a couple of weeks, maybe a lot longer, depending on the size of the site. Um, and they might ask you for content, that sort of thing. You should be asked to review the site before it goes live and test it. Um, you should test your website across modern browsers, so Chrome, Safari, Edge, Firefox, and also test on mobile devices. So get an Android phone, get an Apple phone, test on those. Um, your design agency should do this testing, and but you've got to keep them honest and make sure that you do it too, to make sure that things work the right way, aren't broken, and that you get a good experience across devices, independent of what size it is. So test it on an iPhone, test it on a phone, a tablet, um, that sort of thing. And you can also test. You can test in your browser as well. So obviously you've got a desktop view here, but if you go to view and then developer and inspect elements, it gives you this view. This is in Chrome. Safari has something too. Firefox does as well. And then you've got this device thing here, or you can reposition the window there. And now all of a sudden you're in mobile view. So if you don't have the device you want, to hand, or you just want to test quickly, you can do this and then just make sure you can navigate through to find the thing you want. Um, yeah, that's annoying. Yeah, so that's another way of doing it. And you can also, if you don't want to do it that way, you can just click this device thing tab here and then choose a device and it will resize it and show you that device. You can make that a bit bigger, that sort of thing, but that gives you another way of just testing this at smaller screen sizes. It's good to do that though, because sometimes developers miss things or they neglect a mobile view or something like that. Yeah. And then once you're ready, you can launch. You should do a few things around this. So when you go live, you should have cookie consent to give people controls as to what cookies you lodge on their machines to track them. You should have some sort of analytics on your site so that measures page views and sessions and interactions with the website. So it gives you an idea of what's going on, what people are doing, and also just general volumes of traffic. You should show a sitemap with oops. Yeah, I'll show you what a sitemap is like later. But a sitemap is basically an XML file that is a list of pages on your website. You submit that to Google and it'll get your pages into Google's search index quicker and more completely. And then you can publicize it. So, you know, it's a channel for you to, you know, have people come to you, engage your organization, but they need to know it's there. So, you know, putting it out on newsletters, social media, advertising, all sorts of things, you know, get it out there. And then you can measure the effects of those different avenues if you've got the tracking installed. And then, yeah, the launch of a website is really just the start. You've got to think about what you do after that to keep it engaging. So things like adding regular content via news or updates, running social media campaigns to bring people to your website, checking user behavior on the site, asking users for feedback. You can have like a survey pop up on a website and ask people for feedback that way. And yeah, make improvements to it, change content, you know, change functionality, add pages, take pages away based on the information you're gathering. Okay, almost there. So other sort of tips and information around things. I'll go through this quickly and then we can have a bit of a Q&A if there's any questions. So considering a phased approach, like there's a concept of the minimal viable product. And you know, the primary goal of that is to test, well, it's to be really efficient about getting something out there to test it. So what a definition there is, yeah, the primary goal of an MVP is to minimize time and effort wasted by testing how the market reacts to your idea before building the complete product. So that's sort of a bit of a startup-y way to put it. It might be that, you know, essentially you want to build something really quickly and cheaply just to see if people engage with it, essentially. Sorry, 2 seconds. You might also consider having a phased approach. So say when you've got your website architecture together and you've got a bunch of sections on your website, you could just design and build the most important ones first and add the others later. Or another example of where this is appropriate is we've just been building a website for a new research center. So obviously they've got content about what they are, what they're doing, what their research themes are, and who works there. But they don't have much news. They don't have any research yet because they haven't started. So in this case, we're building that website in stages to get it out there quicker. So it's worth considering about, you know, not doing everything all at once, but taking a phased approach. Measuring traffic, yeah. So I mentioned Google Analytics. There's other ones. Plausible is quite nice. It's easy to use and privacy friendly. Independent Analytics is another alternative. There's Matomo. There's other ones, and then most of your website builders actually have something there as well within their setup. They probably have pricing tiers, and it might be one of those pricing tiers. But it is worth knowing, you know, are people visiting your website? Cookie consent. So yeah, this is all about people consenting about what data you collect on them when you're on the website. And cookies are used primarily for analytics, actually. That's usually where it's used, so people know what page you visit one after the other. And when you come back to a website, if you're a repeat visitor or something like that. It's used in some cases for the functionality of the thing that you've built. So there's different types of cookies. All of these products here scan your website to work out what cookies you're using and then present a cookie consent pop-up for users based on what you're doing. YouTube's another one. So if your YouTube on your website collects cookies about what's being viewed there. Sitemap, so oh, that doesn't work. Let me think about, yeah, so like I said before, it's a list of pages on your website. It's just yeah, machine code, so it doesn't really look like anything, but you should have one that's created all of the website builders should have one which generates automatically, and then it's a case of sharing that with Google. Yeah, so you can share. I haven't got that in there. So Google Search Console, I think it is. Let me see, is it? Yes, it is Google Search Console. So, well, I'll show you. So this is one of our clients. They haven't gone live yet, so they haven't got much there. But let's see. So in this one, you can see, a bunch of data here about web search clicks. So it's quite a high volume site. The thing we've got here, though, is there's a sitemap shared, and that's shared with Google, so it knows to view that sitemap and to periodically check it every week to see if there's any new pages. So that's what this sitemap thing is for. Yeah, content management system. So a designer or developer or web agency will build your website in a content management system, and that allows you to edit the pages and the content on that site. There's three good ones here. So WordPress and Wagtail are both good. They're the ones we use when we're building websites. Craft is another good one. It's got like WordPress and Wagtail are free. Craft is paid for, or I think it's the core might be free and then the plugins are paid for, something like that. They're all really good for giving you a nice clean interface to edit your content though. And if you are thinking about hiring a design agency, there's a link here. It's mostly geared towards charities, but it applies to anyone who's thinking about engaging a digital agency or a freelancer about what you should do to make sure that's successful. And that's it from me. Any questions?
Do we have any questions?
Pop them in the chat. I've got it up and open here.
Lots of information. Everybody's heads are
There's a
spinning
lot.
as to where to start.
That's 20 years of just like out of my head, yeah. Stream of consciousness sort of thing.
And it's we struggle with language across it because I think the minimum viable product is what does V1 have to do? Because I've seen that chart spin out of control as to all the things you could do, because it's really exciting because you're building.
Yeah,
Like,
you've got to be brutal, just like
yeah, you've got to be
core
really
thing. What does
brutal.
it absolutely have to do? And also what stuff can you fake?
And
Like
V1 could just be, like the scroller website. It could just be very simple. It could be one page with just the different pieces you go to when you click on the head. It doesn't have to be complex at all for V1.
yeah,
So
okay.
domain names and web hosting question from Emma.
Yeah, okay, Emma. So we use Gandhi. And so Gandhi is an organization. They are a domain registrar. So they register domain names. And so if I wanted to find a domain name, say Ben Coleman Designs, then you can Google it and it will give you all the options. So you can see here. And then, you can choose one. .coms are about £1 a year. That's quite expensive per year afterwards. They often discount them first. But yeah, you can go shopping for them this way. A couple of points about domain names. You should own your own domain name. Don't let a web agency own your domain name or a freelancer, because at some stage you won't work with them anymore. You should own it. And also with your hosting. So yeah, domain registrars do domains and hosting companies do hosting. Sometimes they sell domains.
If you're doing like a Canva or Wix or this kind of V1, they just host it for you, don't they?
Exactly, yeah.
So if you're on the
yeah.
V1, just keep it really simple and just use whatever they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. If you've got your own domain registered, you can use it with Canva or Squarespace as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally we advocate for you owning your hosting, you owning your domain, and then you just give the designer developer the keys to that to set everything up, but you should own it.
And I do know examples of when agencies and individuals have gone AWOL. It does happen. Things change.
Well,
Agencies
every
get
new client
sold,
I get, unless
Yeah.
they're new, they've come from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And surprisingly often, if relationships go sour and that sort of thing.
But
And
sometimes agencies change or close or
Yeah.
So, you know, quite often as they get bigger, they don't want smaller customers. There's lots of different reasons why, you know, so yeah, control is a really key thing.
And the key thing is as well, design agencies are good at building websites. They are not good at managing servers. Okay, they don't have DevOps people who manage, you know, bare metal servers and rooms of computers. They just
Yeah.
don't. So if they're selling you hosting, they're paying someone else to do it, and they're just adding a margin on top. There's no point in doing that. Fast hosts are quite good.
Yeah, I say
We
I've used them. Yeah.
Yeah, we use a company called DigitalOcean, and then we use it with another company called ServerPilot. It's a bit more complicated
You
than
see,
you probably need.
Fasthost do the hosting as well, so you can get your domain and they do the hosting.
Yeah, exactly. So
Oh, they've been around for a
that's
good
quite,
long time.
yeah, they have. Gander are quite nice. They're a bit more sort of ecological and ethical.
Yeah.
And that's who we advocate, or we advocate for, or recommend clients go to do domains.
So Emily's got a couple of questions. One about top level advice about SEO.
Yeah, I'm going to skip that one. I'll come back to it, but there's another question about the hosting.
Cool. Yeah.
So multiple sites in one place. Uh, Sometimes we do this, sometimes we don't. So, um, for example, one of my clients is Bristol Museums, and we have a museum server. The main website has 1 million hits a month, and so it's got its own server because it's high traffic, and we don't want anything else taking up those server resources, so it stays up. It has a bunch of other websites that have come under its guardianship, let's say that, and we have another server for those because they're all quite low traffic, but built by different people, and we're not sure about security wise whether they're great security wise. So we put all them on another website, on another server. So that's an example in terms of us separating servers, because of one's, you know, super high priority. It's really important the Bristol Museum server doesn't go down because they, you know, it makes money, people buy tickets, that sort of thing. And also security wise. However, we have other clients where we have a server which has, you know, 3 or 4 of their websites on, or they are like their parent organization is this University of Bristol, say, and their staff are shared, like they job share 2 comms roles, say. So we have them co-hosted in the same on the same server, and it's powerful enough to run them both. So yeah, if you want to ask more detail about that scenario, just pop me an email. And then SEO wise, okay, yeah. So SEO, let's go through and have a look at an example of a web page.
Someone's also said about, I don't know anything at all about website, but when you buy a domain name, sometimes the domain company offers a template. I think Fast Hosts, you can build websites in there as well, can't you? So I think they do offer
Yeah, that'll just be like a
templates.
website builder sort of thing.
Yeah, very simple, but
Um,
some of them do have those.
yeah, so key things from a front end perspective. So from looking at a web page, like your key things for SEO wise are your title of your page. That should be an H1 element title. It's important to mention the keywords you think you want to get across in that, and then early on in the copy. So you can see this post is probably trying to get hits for 5G radiation exposure. So I think this is probably along the lines of a myth busting project about people throwing burning tires at 5G towers or something like that. But it's research into, you know, do 5G towers cause radiation? So that's what they need to sort of hook into to get traction. So that's why that's in your content. If I edit this, and you can see there's your main title. And with WordPress, you can add a plugin called Yoast, and that gives you this section where you can add key phrases, and it sets up some stuff around what your title is. So you can see in the tab here, if you hover over that, you can see there, that's your page title, which is in the code. So if
And
you
there's
look at
meta
the,
descriptions as well. And I know meta
yeah,
descriptions have had their day of, they come and go, don't they? But I've always put things into meta description because why not?
Yeah,
Why
so
wouldn't
in
you
this
just,
case, you
yeah.
can see that line there is your title, your page title. Okay, that shows in that tab title there. It doesn't have a script description here, but yeah, that would be good. And then what else do we have? If I scroll down, somewhere in here, we'll have, there's our H1. So that's your H1 element, which is your main page title. So Google, when it looks at a page, it looks at all of these.
And you do
Other
have
thing,
this in the builders. So I know that's kind of the back end is probably what is a bit out of a lot of people's comfort zone. When you're doing this in Wix, Weebly, or Squarespace, you can apply the same logic.
yeah, exactly. And then with stuff like images, you should have an alt description for images. And yeah, it's just thinking about sort of mentioning that keyword. So in this case, if we really want to hook into 5G radiation, then keep on mentioning that phrase, 5G
And this
radiation.
comes with your branding, you know, that conversation about who you're talking to and what you're saying and why you're saying it to them. That should have helped you understand the language and also what they're looking for. There's that approach you've gone through before you sit down to build.
Yeah, exactly. And so that content, we'll see if this works. The content we saw on that 5G radiation post, there we go. So that's what you see in Google. So I've Googled the name of the organization and 5G radiation, and it
Boom.
might have been, I think it was that news article. So that's it there.
Yeah.
This copy here is what will be in that description meta tag. And you notice we didn't have one for that page. So it's generated it from the main content.
Mm.
So yeah, that's where that data comes from. So you've got to make sure Google pick that up from your pages. The other side of it is the sitemap. Like that's really important because that's what Google looks for in order to scrape your website to collect the data to put it into this list of content that appears on search results.
Oh,
Um,
I think we're done. Thank you very much.
yeah,
And we will be sharing, we're going to pop this recording onto the YouTube channel. Frank will share the slides and the data. There's a lot to take in, so do feel free to watch it back. But thank you all very much, people who've been to all of these sessions. Yeah, you're fabulous. So thank you for talking to us on the chat. And we hopefully will see you again in the autumn when we'll be doing another series with some different perspectives on different topics. As Frank said, we want to hear from you as to what those topics should be and how we can help you. And that's how to get in touch with Ben.
super.
Cool.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you all. Cool. It's a lot. All of them are really packed. I mean, that's the whole point, isn't it? It's a lot of information, but that's good. It's good. It's a good use of your lunch hours, everybody.
That reminds me, I've got to have lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, got a 2 o'clock meeting in town as well, so
Cool.
I'm gonna have to head.
Good to
Thanks
see
for
you
coming,
again.
everyone,
See you
and
next time. Thank you, Frank.
yeah,
Oh, Frank's coming to say hello.
Thank you, Ben. It's a great session, and I'll give your time back to lunch. I
super.
know you
Cool.
always delays lunch for this type of training. So hope
Thanks
you
Have
a
a
have
good
lot.
a good
afternoon,
one.
guys. Take care.
Okay,
Good
Bye.
one.
bye.
Bye bye.